Hello, I'm John Shepherd, and in this video I'm going to update you on a couple of things and answer a few questions that have come into the channel and through my Instagram account. First up is a question from Nathan Davids, and he asked whether or not he should compete in the 100 metres before the long jump. To be honest, as long as he's sufficiently conditioned, i.e. he's trained to be able to run the 100 metres and do the long jump, and I specifically say he's trained to run the 100, meaning that he's done sufficient longer sprint work, then he should be well recovered before the long jump. It's after all only 10 to 11 seconds worth of effort. Also, he may well perform better in the long jump. Why is that? Well, there's potentially two reasons for it. One, if he performs well in the 100 metres, his confidence is going to be up, so therefore he may approach the long jump in a more excited state and get a better performance. And secondly, and a little bit more to do with your physiology, when you do one particular event, your body at a high level, high power output, your body is primed. The motor units, the fast twitch fibres are all pre-loaded, pre-set up, pre-fired, ready to go again. So you don't have to warm up quite as much either for the long jump, but you may find that the 100 metres, for example, has potentiated your long jump performance and enables you to perform at a higher physiological level. I've also had quite a few questions on the long jump and I guess triple jump run up by default in terms of accuracy and how to make sure that you don't foul your jumps. Well, the key thing is to ensure that you practice your run up over and over again and develop a rhythm for it, so you know where your acceleration phase is and starts and ends, the alignment phase where you come up into your running, and the attack phase. That you also get very consistent in terms of the placement of the penultimate step. The penultimate step will determine your last step onto the board. Many of you will have probably been in competitions where you foul and then you move your shoe back the distance that you fouled by, perhaps half a shoe, and you foul again. And then you do the same again, and guess what? You get the same result. Well, this is because you're potentially finding the board each time when you go, or finding rather the foul line, you're scratching, rather than getting your foot behind the line on the board. So, if you know what distance is from the board is your penultimate step, you're going to get more of an effective takeoff. This is generally between 2 metres and 2 metres 20, 30 back from the front of the board. If you always hit a mark at 2 metres 20 and you're going to step onto the board with the correct length and get an optimum takeoff, then you're less likely to foul, because that placement on the penultimate will set you up onto the board for your takeoff step. The distance for the penultimate step is not a mark for you to specifically aim for on your run up. Rather, it's for your coach or a fellow athlete to see from the side whether or not your penultimate foot is next to that mark when you take off, and then they should adjust you to that mark rather than to the board. Obviously, you have to establish where that mark is, that penultimate step mark is, consistently over time in training from your full run up, so you know that it's in the right place. There are numerous drills and practices that you can use to develop increased run-up accuracy. For example, I get my group to mark their run-up on the track or on the run-up, long jump run-up, triple jump run-up, without measuring it out. So basically, they have to move back down the run-up, locate where they think their run-up starts from, and place a shoe down there. The more I've done this, the more accurate I've found the athletes in my group are at judging their run-up without measuring it. Another drill you can do is to play a bit of a game. You'll stand on the run-up at the board facing away from the pit. You start to run away from it, and then the coach will shout turn, and you turn and run at probably 80% into the takeoff to try to hit the board. So in doing this, you've got to sight the board, pick it up and make some adjustments as necessary to position yourself to make a takeoff. One of the big issues or questions that's raised about the long jump run up is whether or not you should look at the board. Now, I always advise my athletes to do so, but not to look down with their chin, but to look with their eyes, and they should do this from the start of the run up, so that they're focusing onto that point, onto the board at the beginning of their run up. Then as they get closer into the board, hopefully they'll know that they're going to strike the board in the correct position, and then they'll just lift their eyes up. A number of you will know that I write for various magazines, including the UK's Athletics Weekly, which obviously is all about track and field. As part of that, it's very interesting to be able to interview some top class athletes, elite level. And for example, I have an interview lined up with Troy Doris, who won the Commonwealth Games, who's based in the US, out of Chicago, and he's a 17 metre plus jumper who came 8th as well in the Olympic Games. So it's going to be very interesting to find out about the type of training that he does. I've recently also just come back from a period of warm weather training in Portugal with one of my athletes this year, Paul Hogan, who's jumped 7 metres 79. We've been to this particular place near Monte Gordo for the last, 4 out of 5 seasons, and it's a great facility for training and for the climate. But I want to say a few things about warm weather training, in that it's important that you don't over train when you go warm weather training or on any kind of training camp, particularly if it's close to the season. You'll obviously be highly motivated and the conditions and the environment are going to up that motivation. So what you need to do together with your coach is design a training program that holds you back, that enables you to develop your speed, your power and crucially your technical ability, but doesn't lead to any form of burnout. So I always adopt what's known as a less is more approach, and I will try to reduce reps. If an athlete has done a very good jump, for example, off of 15 strides, as happened with Paul out in Portugal, then I'll stop the session, because basically there's very little to be gained from performing another repetition. You want to ensure that the best performances are produced on the track or at the pit in the long and triple jump case, but not on the training track. So therefore, despite being able to ramp up performance, perhaps do more training sessions whilst away, you've got to ensure that you don't overdo it and make sure that when you come back to your country or to your university or whatever it is, that you're in the best shape then, not when you're away. A final thing that I want to talk about is eccentric strength, or eccentric muscular actions to be more precise. Now, I've touched upon these in various videos over the last year or so, but I began to realise through my own experience with the athletes I coach and through some research that the eccentric portion of a muscular action, and in particular the stretch reflex where the muscle goes on stretch, which is the eccentric portion, is key in particular to the takeoff in the long jump. Using an analogy, the harder you throw a ball against a wall, quicker it will come back. So the ball hits the wall, it absorbs the energy. Now that's the eccentric portion of your muscular action in the stretch reflex. So if you think about it, when you go to take off, and I'm not saying you should hit the ball really hard, I'm talking about the muscles, your muscles in the ankle, knee and hip, and their ability to react eccentrically is crucial, in that if they can not absorb too much force, but they can store it and return it, then therefore you're going to get a more effective and powerful takeoff through a heightened reflex in the stretch reflex. Consequentially, we do a lot of eccentric training on double legs and single legs, where you leap off a box, for example, and block the landing and just hold that eccentric portion with a very shallow knee bend. And I've found that it started to develop long jumpers, for example, who can gain more height off of the board, who are not deliberately going for more height. It seems that their eccentric capacity is enabling them to project themselves off of the board with greater height. As usual, thanks for listening and good luck with your training and competitions. And do subscribe to the channel and leave any comments you may have below or on my Instagram page.